It's not that we live in a matrix, it's that we live in a world that's incredibly complex and we have limited hardware and limited resources, and we can't do it all. It is hot and humid today, and I'm about to do a roller ski test to see how my toe fares. I did some elliptical yesterday for an hour in 15-minute sets, and that was okay. Did a little bit of treadmill last night. That wasn't great, so I'll probably stay off the treadmill. Now we're gonna see if the roller ski boots and the stiff bottom in the boot keeps the toe from bending, and if I can load it. So hopefully the answer is yes. The boots protect the toe, not a single bit of pain. In preparation for the roller ski race this weekend, I'm going to swap out my worn down roller ski wheels for brand new ones. The new guys are 110 millimeters, and these are probably worn down to 100 or less. I would say less, probably, judging by the size. Anyway, this is going to put me a little bit higher off the ground, which I have to work on that stability, which is why I'm doing this today. But it also gives you a little bit more clearance. If you hit a rock or stick or something with a smaller wheel, you're going to hit the bottom of the ski and it could throw you down. So with a taller wheel, you have more clearance. Anyway, I want to get used to the bigger wheels a few days before the race. I've been using these wheels for probably a year, so at least once during the season I'm going to have to buy a new set of wheels. The 110 millimeter wheels are a little bit more expensive. It's like 120 bucks for a set of 4. So that's an expense you have to consider. But I love roller skiing, so it's worth it. Wow, it's humid. I just finished a roller ski in the covered bridges area of Bennington, and I was playing around with the shorter poles and using the tips that Jake Brown, the biathlete, gave me, and I can move at a really fast clip now. I was under 4 minutes per mile on the flats whenever I picked up the pace and did his technique, and my heart rate's probably, I don't know, high 150s when I do that. It's not a race pace. I mean, it would be a race pace if I kept it for a long period of time, but just for doing speeds, it's pretty comfortable and it's very stable. The new wheels that I put on today are awesome. I'm not as afraid of the road because it's a smoother ride now. But I also realized that the wheels are heavier, so picking them up is a little bit more arduous. Anyway, I did the first mile and a half pretty comfortably and then picked up the pace employing the Jake Brown tips and working more on tempo and using my core. And thought, why not go after a threshold? Why not see how I could do relative to the race at Craftsbury? So I put in, I don't know, a little less than 10K. Not at a race effort, but a threshold effort. And I think I'm faster than I was in 2021. I'm excited to try it out. But yeah, feeling good, feeling fast. All right, I gotta go so I can let some air blow through the car. It is a slow, sleepy morning today. I'm still recovering from the running camp, and now we've got some new projects at my family's house, doing some inside work. Tore apart what they call the front room, gutted all the furniture, doing a scrub down and trying to figure out what that room will become. Anyway, yesterday I was going from morning until midnight, and I'm pretty tired this morning. So I'm hanging out listening to a new book, The Experience Machine by Andy Clark. And this type of research has really informed my thinking over the past 6 or 7 years. It's about the brain being a predictive engine and our consciousness being a predictive simulation and not a one-to-one representation of reality. That what we perceive and experience is mostly constructed based on predictive algorithms, just like compressing a photo to make a JPEG or compressing a video. The computer is predicting the likelihood of each pixel's value remaining the same or changing depending on what's happening to its neighbors. So most of what's around me right now, my brain is compressing, but little subtle details, changes, updates, novelty, like the car that just went by over there that I saw in my peripheral vision. Brain says, okay, new data, so map that, put a little bit of energy there, but everything else just compress. And if there's an update that's happening that we're not attending to, it won't show up. So there's research that demonstrates this really clearly, that leads to the phenomenon of inattentional blindness. There was a video maybe in 2012 called The Invisible Gorilla that demonstrated this effect. They had two teams of basketball players passing basketball back and forth, one group dressed in black, one group dressed in white. And the experimenter asked you, the audience observer, to count how many times the players dressed in white passed the basketball back and forth. And most people get the number accurately. Then the experimenter asks, did you see the gorilla walk through the screen? And most people are like, what are you talking about? And then they rewind the video, and right in the middle, a man in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the scene, thumps its chest, and then walks off. And that was all happening the whole time, but you were blind to it because you weren't attending to it. And because you weren't attending to it, your brain's predictions about what was going on compressed everything else in the scene. It amplified what you attended to and compressed everything else. So inattentional blindness, that which we are not attending to, we are often blind to because our brain doesn't update the simulation. So when you know this, and you know that you're living in a constructed reality, that doesn't mean that there's not a reality out there. It just means that our brains don't have enough bandwidth to process it all. It's not that we live in a matrix, it's that we live in a world that's incredibly complex, and we have limited hardware and limited resources, and we can't do it all. So the brain is incredibly efficient in choosing or selecting what it is it wants to put its attentional lens on, and then it devotes its resources to that moment. And this is important because the brain's like 2 or 3% of our body weight, yet consumes 20% of our energy. So it is the most costly organ that we possess. So if it wasn't as efficient, we would have brains the size of houses, and we would have to eat 7 million calories a day. Anyway, I predict that I'm going to go upstairs and that at some point movement is going to occur. Whew, it is hot and humid, and the sweat keeps getting in my eyes. Oh man, that was a really good ski. The shorter poles and the new core engagement that Jake Brown was telling me about is allowing me to do a Simon-Kruger technique so much better than I ever have. So the switching of the poles and the core engagement is really made all the difference. So I was having a blast out there until I put my pole between my legs and went down. Landed on my right thumb, which is my good thumb. I kind of protected my left thumb. It was interesting. It all happened so quickly, but even in the midst of being caught and flying through the air, I rolled onto my right side to protect that thumb and that toe probably as well. So now I've got a broken toe, a recovering broken thumb, something weird going on in my right foot, and an elbow that's really sore and that's going to get tight, and the scab is going to reduce flexibility. Anyway, that's roller skiing. But it was a good ski. And even after I fell, I had a really good ski. I'm just leaving the oral surgeon's office. I had a checkup to see how this was healing up, and he said it looks good. So that's one less thing to worry about. The toe seems to be in a stable state at the moment, as long as I don't put pressure on it. The elbow is stiff and the bone is swollen, but I think I'll be able to use it in the race. I did wake up with a headache this morning, and it hasn't gone away. That's not common for me. Usually the only time I have lasting headaches is when I get Lyme disease. So I'm hoping that is not the case. We'll see tomorrow morning how I feel. Anyway, I'm going to go try a roller ski, see how my head does on that, and then help my family with some projects. We're reorganizing one of the rooms. Just finishing up a roller ski in the covered bridges area of Bennington, and taking it super chill. And I thought my time is probably going to be several minutes per mile slower than I would normally ski, just because I'm going so easy, comfortably, casually. But I'm also really trying to implement all of the new technical elements that I've been working on, just to try to make them as efficient, smooth, synchronous as possible. And I look at my watch, and I'm probably 5:10 or 5:15 pace per mile, which is a very decent pace for a ski. That wouldn't be an easy ski. So it's amazing to me how focusing on technique, focusing on efficiency, focusing on just tying all the elements together and finding that sweet, magical spot, what a difference that can make in effort, or perceived effort as well. So this is exciting. And that's kind of what this channel and these videos and my process is all about. Finding a low energy state that still allows you to perform at a high level, but without willpower, without force, without struggle, but just to find the gentlest yet most powerful method of forward motion. But you got to work on the technique. You've got to be deliberate in whatever it is that you're doing. For me right now it's skiing, but I'm also working on this in all other aspects of my life, trying to reduce the amount of energy and yet at the same time increase the output and increase the enjoyment. Allow for curiosity. Allow for the moment to be enriched rather than trying to force your way to the finish line, keeping your eye on the prize. To me, the prize is right here. It's all around me the whole time. So, I don't know. You know, I often wonder, why am I making these videos? I have to keep asking because I forget. Why am I showing them about my skiing and talking about my books and all this stuff? Because this is my goal in life, and this is what I want to share. How to find compassion and gentleness in the midst of competence. The question of the day is, why is there an axe head in the dish drying rack? Nobody knows. The smoke from Canada is back, so it's not just hot and humid today, it's also nasty air quality. It's going to be that way in Craftsbury tomorrow too. Not exciting. I am about to head north to Facein, Vermont, where I stayed for the trail running camp, but I'm going to stay there tonight as a launching point for the roller ski race at Craftsbury tomorrow. And the toe is doing okay, hasn't bothered me roller skiing at all. Elliptical has been fine as long as I wear flip-flops and put the weight on my heels, so I have been able to physically engage. So my body's holding up pretty well, but I'm in a strange mental state as I head north. I found out earlier today that John Ogden, who I interviewed at the Craftsbury race this winter, and I can link that here, John just died. We raced together at Middlebury, And his kids, Catherine and Ben, have been doing very well on the World Cup and at the Olympics. In fact, Ben won the overall World Cup this year for 23 and under, or under 23. I think it's the first time an American's ever done that for men. Anyway, it's strange. John was a huge part of the Nordic community in Vermont and even New England. And a lot of people really benefited from his hard work. And it's odd. I mean, we have a history back in the 80s, but very little contact since. Most I've talked to him was the interview at the race this winter, and it was nice to reconnect. And it was a fun conversation. And I look forward to seeing him more at races in the future. So, it's with a somewhat heavy heart. And again, I didn't know his post-college being that well at all, but still it feels like a loss. Normally Mount Equinox would be right there in view. Now it's just a smoky haze.
It's race morning, and I have a sore throat. I'm hoping it's from the smoke. I was really bad yesterday, and my lungs feel totally fine. And I'm not congested. It's just my throat. So, we shall see. Very postmodern.
Ooh, there's a manatee in the floor.
This smoke ain't no joke. I arrived at the Craftsbury Outdoor Center to discover that the race is canceled due to smoke. They feel that it's just unhealthy to have people racing at high intensity. So everybody's just gonna ski. We're all still here. So gets me off the hook. I'm gonna film some stuff and practice some more technique work. But I don't have to worry about the race. I'm a little disappointed, but ultimately what I wanted to do is just see everybody's technique and learn and maybe film some of them. So I can still do that, but I don't have to put in a race effort. And I can try to improve my Strava segment times as well. I'm back home, and you might hear from my voice that the smoke did a number on my throat. At first, I didn't feel it, but after I skied for, maybe an hour, hour and a half, I could start to feel it accumulating damage in my throat, and my eyes got really stingy. So it was the right choice to call the race. But everybody was already there. They didn't make the call until, 45 minutes before registration, and there's no cell service in northern Vermont. So there were over 100 athletes there. So rather than having a race effort, we all just skied. I asked the event organizer if it was okay that we skied, and he said, yeah, it's on you. We don't want responsibility for you doing a hard effort in this. We don't want you to feel obligated. But if you all want to go out and ski and do your thing, you're more than welcome to. So I got to ski with lots of extraordinary athletes, but without any pressure. I was really nervous driving up. The moment I woke up to getting there, just really scared of being discovered as wanting. My identity is terrified of being measured and found inadequate. So it was a great relief to have the race off the table because my technique goes out the window when I'm in a race effort. In running, it's different because I have so much experience that I can play around with being comfortable and efficient. But in skiing, I'm too new
So, yeah, this animal thing comes over me and I just go hard and my technique gets really weak. So, you had many members of the U.S. ski team there, men and women. You had the Stratton SMS T2 team, which is one of the development teams for the U.S. ski team, and many members of the U.S. ski team are on the Stratton team. You had the Craftsbury Green Racing Project, who produces lots of Olympians as well. And you had lots of college athletes, University of Vermont, Middlebury, etc. So lots of really talented athletes. And the U.S. men, the top guys were doing the classic technique, or what they call the diagonal stride, where you're going back and forth like this in a track. You can do that on roller skis too. They're a different kind of roller ski. So they were all doing that, so I really couldn't ski with them. But the top women and the college guys were skating. So I would hop in behind people and just ski with them for a bit. And at a couple points, they were doing intervals. Especially the women were doing more intervals than the college guys were. So I'd jump right on the train and ski with them. And I got to try to relax into the pace they were going at rather than just spazzing and trying to keep it up. And found my Kruger at their high speed, and I was able to stay with them pretty comfortably, and my technique held together on the flats and the climbs. So when I did this race in 2021, the top women beat me by well over 4 minutes, and the collegiate women were beating me by 2.5 to 3 minutes. So I'm now up close to where the top women are. I don't know how long I could have kept up the pace that we were skiing at, but at least for interval sessions, I'm able to stay with them. So that's a huge improvement. And to be able to stay relaxed and keep my tempo. But also, more importantly, to know how they ski in each of the sections, because I don't know. I don't know how they're skiing the flats, the gradual downhills, the downhills coming into the uphills, the tops of the uphills. Like, there's lots of different places where you employ different technical strategies. And the one thing I noticed that really surprised me, they will keep poling even on pretty fast downhills where I would just get into a tuck. So at one point we were going in excess of 20 miles an hour and they were still poling down the hill. And that's something I hadn't considered doing. So I may play around with that and just do some speed tests. It also scares me a little bit to pole on the downhill because I'm afraid of tripping myself. Anyway, there were 2 big hills on the course. It's a figure 8. And on the first loop, there's what they call Dino Hill. And it's not super steep, but it's steep. And it's a grind. And most of the coaches and the officials for NENSA, the New England Nordic Ski Association, they were camped out on top of that hill. And I was V2ing up that hill every time and noticed that a lot of the skiers were not. They were doing the V1 technique, where you pole on one side and then recover with your leg, whereas V2 is poling on both sides. It's a lot more powerful, but requires solid, locked-in technique and a lot of strength. So I heard some of them commenting on me V2ing the hill every time. And at one point they even called me out and they're like, dude, you're V2ing everything. And I said, I thought everybody did that. I thought that's what the top skiers do now, but they seemed to be pretty surprised that I was V2ing that hill, just even casually, because V2 is something that when you slow down, it becomes too difficult. Or at least that's how it seems if you're not doing something like a Simon Kruger. But one of the reasons I love Simon Kruger's technique is that every part of his body is working together. So no part of his body is doing any heavy lifting. They're all working at the same time. So even slowly, you can still V2 with his technique. You don't lose momentum. Anyway, I heard coaches talking about me to their athletes as I was going by, and I heard one say, notice how he's using his whole body. So that was a nice validation of the technique, that work that I've been doing. And I skied that dyno hill, 20 times maybe. And a couple times I pushed it, not super hard, but I pushed it. And I now have a top 10 time on Strava on that segment. And we're talking about U.S. ski team members and the professional athletes that live and train there. So I'm skiing as fast as they do when they do interval sessions. So again, that's a huge validation of the technique work and the strength work that I'm doing. The polling machine and the pull-ups and the knees to bar has really given me the ability to power without getting tired. So good things to come in that regard. Anyway, it was a lot of fun skiing with these athletes. I didn't do any filming except for one little film of Julia Kern from a distance while she was doing some diagonal intervals up a hill. The reason I didn't film is that when the start list was published last night, I noticed that there were only 2 people over the age of 27 in the race, I being one of them. And the 27-year-old was quite a bit older than everybody else in the race. So I didn't want to be the old guy filming all these late teens and 20-somethings. It just felt kind of weird and inappropriate. Anyway, big success. We'll see how this affects me tomorrow. Hopefully it just goes away like a stair climb. You feel really rough and sore the day of, but the next day you're fine. We shall see. But it was a big success, and I'm actually happy the race didn't occur. Oh, and by the way, the downhill, Dennis's nemesis, I was not scared. Like, the fear is gone now. I feel totally competent and comfortable, and it's easy for me now. So the process of gently approaching it and exposing myself to a little bit of it at a time, and then learning to get comfortable in the midst of that exposure, telling myself, okay, we're good. At this speed, we're good. And any fear you have is thought-based. It's not based on the data itself, because you're going 15 miles an hour, and you ski 15 miles an hour on flat ground, so this is not a scary speed. So just getting through that process, I'm now good on that hill. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be skiing the 30-mile-an-hour plus downhills here in Bennington, because it's very different on a road where cars can be coming out of driveways. There could be gravel on the road. The pavement could have some bumps or cracks in it. They clean the roller ski loop, they blow it and sweep it, so there's nothing on it. Pavement's in great shape, and there's no cars potentially coming out of a driveway when you're at 30 miles an hour and have no brakes. Anyway, this has been one grand experiment for the past couple years. I'm employing methods and processes that are not standard. I don't have a coach for skiing. I'm just observing other top skiers. My strength training is never hard. I'm not doing what I know top strength athletes do, what I used to do in my early 20s. My elliptical, everything that I do is super chill, very low heart rate. My roller skiing, sometimes I'll play around doing harder efforts on the hills, but they're never long. So to have the results I had today with this experimental, gentle training is a huge, huge win for a compassionate approach. And I'm very excited to see how this continues to evolve, because I plan on getting fitter and I plan on getting better. So we'll see what happens. All right. I'll see what happens tomorrow.